Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, spiritual life coach and your host of Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking greater possibilities in our reality, and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. Listen to their stories and hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Welcome to 2024, and I want to ask you, do you feel like something is calling you to show up bigger? Do you feel there's a sense of urgency and mission on your life to be a creator in this world and not simply a consumer? If you know there's a purpose in your life and you're unsure of how to move forward, my purpose is to help you make that happen. So if this message is awakening a curiosity in you, I invite you to follow the link in the show notes and have a conversation with me about how I can support you with my spiritual life coaching one-to-one program. And also, if you haven't already, feel free to tune into Her Inspirations, which is the sister podcast to Her Conversations. Each episode of Her Inspirations is an exploration of the things we encounter as we embark on our spiritual and awakening journeys. And if you haven't already considered joining the mailing list to that, you'll receive additional meditation, journaling, and inspiration notes, and also links to resources that will support you on your own journey. Again, use the link in the show notes to join up with that. My guest on this week's episode is Andra Dediu. She's a transpersonal psychotherapist and holds a master's in consciousness and transpersonal psychology. She supports individuals to integrate the highs and the lows of their really far-out experiences like spiritual awakenings, mystical experiences, and insights from altered states of consciousness, which may have come about spontaneously from spiritual practice or psychedelics. Her work is experiential, process-based, embodied, systematic, transpersonal, and relational. She's currently preparing to publish her research on integrating spiritual emergencies to better support her work with integration. In this conversation, we both talk about the darkest moments in our own lives and how they transformed us. And also we think aloud about what it is to be human and what the real spiritual experience is. So as always, I begin by asking my guest. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel that higher energetic resonance?
Definitely when I'm sitting with people in conversation, whether I'm holding space or whether it's just a dialogue between equals and we get to traverse like just different realms, beyond the mundane, where we can sort of root down into our beingness, but also connect from a higher place. That feels energizing to me. And it's not just an intellectual experience, but it becomes a body experience as well, right? Like there's tingles, there's energy through the body. Everything becomes alive.
Beautiful. And before we move into our deep conversation, Andra, can you just share a little bit about your story and how you got to be doing the work that you're doing today?
I've always been super curious about being in service. From whenever I was a little child, I wanted to be a doctor, and then I realized that I didn't like blood, so that wasn't going to work for me. And then I kept searching, like, what am I going to do to this world? What can I do that leaves a positive impact? And then in my 20s, I got a little lost. And in being lost, I turned towards intense yoga and meditation practice as a way to heal myself. And via those practices, I reached phenomenal states of consciousness. I was in full bliss for 3 months. And then it began to sort of taper off. But while I was in that, and the whole experience probably lasted 2 years, I was in an altered state of consciousness. And during those 2 years, I had a lot of information just consistently dropping in about my purpose in this world. And one of the things that really emerged strongly was the healer archetype. And I could track it then in my family system and all the ways that I tried to embody it in different ways, but it never felt quite right. Until finally, it landed that my work was to be a therapist and that I needed to sit with people, that some sort of, whether it's dyadic work or I'm holding space for groups, that was my purpose. And then it started being reflected back to me constantly, like from left, right, and center, when I was looking at my astrology or when I was looking at my numbers, or different people would just constantly be like, oh, wow, you have such a grandmother energy. I'd love to sit with you. Or you're such an old soul. Or it was really actually overwhelming at one point, until finally I can settle into it now.
Mm-hmm. I was just mooching on your website a minute ago as well, and there was a quote that just popped out at me, and I just wanted to kind of reflect it back to you, because I was like, yeah, like I feel that. And it was saying, I can sit with others' darkness because I've sat with my own. And I was just like, yeah, I can kind of, I relate to that in a way that I think when people meet me, they kind of see me as I am now, not realizing, or unless they really know me, or the people that really know me that know that my journey hasn't been easy at all by any stretch of the imagination. And there's been so much hardness as well, that really it's only now that I'm feeling that I'm kind of getting into a stage of my life where I can actually continuously just be in joy without necessarily being pulled down to the depths that I was. I'm not saying that it's all going to be plain sailing now, but there was just like a lot of being surrounded by grief. I'd say that as well. I think that was like the second part of that quote as well. You were speaking about grief, because like the household was grief. In terms of like my mother's grief is what was the prevailing energy really for much of my childhood. So it was like just being in that space and like understanding that and going through all of the things meant that I don't know, I just felt something drawn to that, like something really spoke to that quote and what you spoke about, like when I was reading it back and just kind of working out where we were going to go with our conversation today. And also when you just said as well, being lost in the 20s, and what came to my mind is like, isn't that what our 20s are about anyway?
Maybe.
I don't know what you'd respond to with that, because I'm trying to think of anyone who had it. Like we all kind of go off the rails in our own way, or I would say like the majority of us, because that's the first decade that you are out of home and you're trying to play in the world and be an adult, but you still want to have that fun before you really kind of take on that responsibility, and people start to kind of pin their ground in their 30s and then try and work it out from there, and it works out or it doesn't, or it kind of guides us in all of these things. And I'm thinking, isn't your 20s about being lost? How that would hit you.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. But the ways that I was lost, it wasn't just around loss in terms of my place in the world and figuring out who I am, but I also I was also experiencing quite a bit of depression. Yeah. And I started contemplating taking my own life and what that would be like and how I would do it. And that for me, that was rock bottom. And in that way, like I lost myself right? Like I lost the good parts of what it is to be alive and to be in connection with human beings, what it is to feel joyful and purposeful, what it is to be in service to something. I lost all those bits. I just turned towards really fun drugs and lots of alcohol and lots of partying. And yes, definitely, I think that is part of a lot of the life of what it is to be 20. And now and it is completely, in hindsight that I'm looking at this now, but it feels like I went too far. Yeah. But also maybe, in as far that the pendulum swung into that direction, that now it did go into the opposite and now coming to more of a balanced point.
Yeah. What do you think it was that turned it around for you? Or, like you said, you got to that rock bottom, and then there would have been a point where, there's like, you're here today, so clearly there was a point where there was a turnaround, or there was something that kind of started to build itself back up from that place where you'd hit the rock bottom. What was it for you that, or if you can remember it consciously or something like that? Because in you sharing this, and thank you for like opening up in this way, you will be speaking to somebody who's listening into this, and who knows where they are. They are at this point in time, and sometimes just hearing someone else's revival story, even though you may not even see how it's possible for you, you'll just be like, okay, it can't be like this forever, and there's a way out somehow, there's a path out for me.
And I think it was that I had a sense of agency, that I felt like I had control over my own life. I still had that within me, even if perhaps I had forgotten it. I think that there's quite a bit of power and strength within me. And as I think that there's actually within all human beings. And once I realized, like, whoa, I'm actually visualizing myself jumping off a balcony, right? Like I'm starting to picture it. That was actually a moment where I woke up to, this is too far. So I touched into it, I pulled back. What can I do? I have agency, and I am blessed enough, that I had a Canadian passport. I had enough savings that I could, and that I had a supportive partner at the time, who's now my husband, that I could turn to him and say, we need to leave. Like, we need a shift, a massive shift. So we actually moved to Thailand. But that sense of agency, like I still have power, I still have control, I can still shift something. That's what took me out. And it was a huge, like, moving continents, right? Like not moving, from Canada to America, but moving from Canada to Thailand, right? Like that was pretty drastic. And I needed that. I needed something that was drastic.
What do you think it is about moving so far, like picking yourself up and taking yourself into a completely strange environment that is healing, or that was healing for you?
It was deeply healing, yeah. And I think, just Thailand, even now I have such a strong connection with the land, because it was so healing for me. It is such a regenerative place for so many people. I heard somebody say this, because I lived in Bangkok for like 7-8 years, and somebody said, people, oh God, how is it? Lost souls go to Bangkok, to find themselves.
Mm.
And it's such a weird thing, because when you think about Bangkok, it's I'm not even going to go there, but it's not the place where you think that it would be healing. And yet it so was. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the sunshine. Maybe it was the warmth, right? Maybe that was what was healing. Maybe it's the fact that it's such a deeply spiritual land, right? Like they make offerings to spirits. Every house has a little spirit house where they give food and a little drink on a daily basis, sometimes multiple times throughout the day. So spirit is so alive there, and it's so honored there. And maybe that was supportive. I don't know. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just pure absolute luck, right? Just the draw of the card that somehow brought me there. I mean, I can create multiple meanings out of it, and I can definitely create a story. And I can say that it was my astrology and it was the right timing and it was absolutely perfect in Thailand, and I have past lives in Thailand and all that stuff. I can say that, but do I really know that that's true? Not necessarily, right? That's the story that I'm creating, and that's the narrative that I'm creating. So I'm conscious that there's a story there, when really maybe it was the weaving of all these different aspects. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
I think everything has a bit of relevance within us, doesn't it, really? You know, we try and just think it's a thing, and then then in hindsight it kind of just makes perfect sense that it happened how and when it did. I know I'm getting those deep realizations about everything that happened in my life now, especially now as I'm like putting everything forward. It's like, oh, that's why that happened. Even the most minuscule thing or meaningless thing, or the time that I'd have a job where I'd be like, what's the point of this? It's like, oh, that's why I worked there for, you know, even though I walked out over it after like a couple of weeks, it was like there was something that I needed from that little experience, then that is now relevant to when I'm trying to put everything together for myself and create what I'm creating now. Because it's all coming from me, it's all coming from the experiences, so that the ideas that come up, then the skill or the information is there based on this seemingly useless random thing that happened way back when. It's like, oh, that's why you did, oh, this, yeah, and it all kind of really fits together. And yeah, you can never really make sense. Who was it? A Steve Jobs thing. It's like you can only ever really make sense of it. Like in hindsight, it's just like perfect, and it all really fits. So sometimes like that when you doesn't make sense, it's like maybe you're just not using it yet. That thing that you're in the middle of that you're like, why did that happen? It's like, well, you'll call on it. You'll call on it at some point, and it will make perfect and beautiful sense, and all you'll do is laugh. It'll be like, oh my God, you know.
And I can hold that too, right? Like I can hold that. Going to Thailand was absolutely perfect for me.
Yeah,
absolutely perfect. Me coming to Canada right before COVID hit, unknowingly that there was a huge global shutdown that was about to happen, was absolutely perfect for me, right? I can hold that. And yet I think I come from this sort of philosophy of mind where I'm aware that I'm a meaning-making machine. Yeah, maybe not a machine, but I'm a meaning-making being. So there's this philosophical idea that I am constantly constructing. I'm constructing myself. I'm constructing my story. I'm constructing, things that were important and milestones in my life. I am constructing reality, or what I believe reality to be. Everything is a construction. The philosophical state. It's called constructivism, right? So and that's the way that I look at it. So when I hold that lens as well, that I'm constantly constructing something, then I'm also aware that I can construct it being perfect, which I can hold. Like it really was perfect. Yeah. But was it really perfect, or am I just creating the perfection from the narrative that I'm forming?
What's the option? What's the other option if you don't do that?
A meaningless life.
Mm.
So if, right, I can create meaning, and then my life becomes meaningful, it becomes purposeful, it becomes absolutely right just as it is. Or I can go into the other side of it, of going in complete existential angst and not knowing the meaning, and everything is just purely accidental and nothing means anything. There's no purpose to anything, and nothing is perfect, and it just is. And there's that too. Yeah. And maybe then it's not holding either or, but holding both at the same time, holding the fact that I am constructing meaning, and also the fact that really maybe everything is meaningless at the same time. And can I hold both and still continue to live my life, and continually like titter-totter between these two ways of being and living? And maybe this titter-tottering is where I find my agency, because then I realize that I actually have a choice in regards to everything that I interact with. I choose who I am. I choose the words that I speak. I choose the person that I am. I choose my work. So yeah, I went a little bit farther. I'll stop there. See how that lands for you.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's just, what is life? Like you said, it could be everything or it could be nothing at all.
Right. And we have no idea. That's the thing, right? Like I think we like to know, and we like to believe that we know more than we actually do. But the more I learn, the more I realize just I don't know anything, and humanity don't know anything. Like, we think we know what reality is, but we have no clue what reality really is. Like, it's just, we think we know, but do we really? Like, we think we know what life is, but again, do we really? Is life just purely for it to be explored and to be lived? Is that it? I don't know.
Yeah, I suppose it depends on where you're what you're caught in. And by that I mean if you allow your idea of what life is to be presented to you, like it is when you go through education and culture, and media tells you what life is all about and the meaning of life, and you try and fit into that as a to make meaning of your life as to whether it's going okay or whether it's not going okay. But then the fact that so many people have such a problem with that, or don't have, or not even necessarily a problem, just have a differing of opinion, then, like you said, proves that it can't just be solely that. Or maybe it is, the whole idea of it is that we just all create what we create, and that's the idea. And the idea that there is just one idea is a nonsense. Who knows?
It is.
I don't know. We could spend forever trying to work out what the hell's going on here. Like, what is this all about? I think things like really shift when two people can just see the same thing and see it so differently, and it be so deeply real for them. That they can't even imagine anything other, or they can appreciate something other, but they just can't imagine how that other person would have ever got there, and can really staunchly hold on to their own beliefs. It's like, how can you believe that?
And that for me is the scary bit, right? Because that conflict between two people, where it's, how can you believe that? And there's such friction there. And I think that that's the cause of so much of the fucked upness of our world right now. The fact that people do hold so strongly to their beliefs, and they cannot respect the belief of another individual, or even just listen to it, or be curious or open to it. I think that creates wars. Yeah. I think that creates what we're doing to our planet. Yeah. Like all of that stuff. I think that's scary for me. The fact that we can't be open to what other people believe.
I think that possibly goes back to what you said earlier of being able to hold both things, being able to understand that it means everything and it means nothing at the same time, because that in itself takes an idea to a way to kind of just like juggle your mind and be able to kind of dip in and out of like wanting everything to be everything and then allowing everything to be nothing. We don't get rewarded for having that mindset, you know, like we get rewarded for holding something true and holding onto it and building a life around it. And as you grow older, that ideal gets so solidified that it becomes your identity. So then to not have that then is to lose your identity, and then where are you? No, and that's a place where most people can't be without the ideal that creates who they are and what they stand for. If you don't know where you are without that thing. And I think that comes down to then spirit. So then you can play the game of like, well, I'm here, but I'm not here. I'm part of it, but I'm not really part of it. I'm, you know, I believe that, but I'm open to it not being true at all. You know, that all these kind of things that you play around with. As a rule, that's not welcomed because it's not solid and it's not controllable, I would say. You know, especially if you're trying to kind of like direct a mass of people, like nations of people. You can't have all these people just deciding that it's something and it's nothing the next day. Like they're not going to do what you tell them to do, are they?
That's interesting. I wonder what it would be like for leaders to take, like you mentioned, identity, right? To take their identity out, to take their politics and their whatever, you know, whatever they believe, right? If they're liberal or they're whatever, to take that out and to just hold the complexity of all the different choices that we have, right? Would there be more wisdom in that if they could take the identity out?
The thing that pops up for me when you say that is the people who hold positions of leadership are never going to relinquish that, just like by nature, like whichever side of wherever they're sitting on. The nature of in particular political leadership is that you stand firm and you dig your heels. You're not going anywhere. And so I think the only way that their position becomes irrelevant is by the mass of people removing their energy on that person, because I think that's what these people are, you know, they're left or right, up or down, whichever way, are propped up by the masses' belief that they need to hold these people in place, and that's what perpetuates them going on, because you know it's just liars. Like a lot of the time it's like, come on now. But they can continue even though more and more people seem to be really noticing the game. But the leadership can continue because there's still a core of people that believe that it's necessary for them to be there, and will kind of hold them in place. It's that thing where it's like it will go as soon as everyone realizes we don't need that. But it's then to imagine like, well, if we don't have leadership, or you know, then we'll have chaos and anarchy in the streets and people will run wild and everything. Like maybe for a bit, but like probably not forever. You know, there'll be just like this, like, what are we going to do? Like chaos can't ensue forever. Because ultimately most people on the planet just want a peaceful life, whatever that looks like for them. They don't want all of this. No one really wants any of that at all. And that just kind of comes from the idea that we just continually get played and our beliefs get played and triggered, and that's where it all comes from, is why people are holding on so tightly, because they believe it's keeping their reality together. Maybe
that's it, right?
Yeah,
they're holding so strongly to their reality, because if I don't have this reality, what do I have? And to fall into the state of maybe maybe there is no meaning to this life is too much for people. But maybe, I don't know, maybe we need some of that. Maybe we need to sit with, maybe this life is completely meaningless as well. Yeah. So again, not to titter totter like incomplete, but just to hold both. And when you said something that you said around politicians and how there's people that uphold them, what I got was like, we're giving our sense of agency, our sense of power over to them, right? We're giving it away instead of what I like to do for myself, and what I like to invite people that I work with is to pull it back.
Right.
Yeah, pull that power that we're constantly giving away to people in power, to facilitators, to therapists, to coaches, to intellectuals, to academics. Like we're just giving them away, as opposed to like, let's pull it back and hey, I'm a sovereign being here. Right? I have a sense of agency. I have a sense of control. I can choose how I think, what I believe in. I can be curious. I don't have to listen to somebody tell me what to think and how to act and how to be. But I actually have my own sense of power here. Yeah.
There just needs to be a massive, I think people just need to, I don't want to say this because it's going to sound like people just need to, and that's not really where I'm coming at all.
Well, take your time. Yeah, you can rephrase that. Yeah.
It's not people just need to. It's like when you get to a point of like, you're not working anymore. Just like like, we've tried this like decade after decade after decade, and like, where are we now? Like just going around in circles, and maybe even just like digging the trenches even deeper, hurting each other more, being more and more removed from ourselves. But then on the other side of that is maybe this is humanity's rock bottom, where it seems that we're going like humanity's rock bottom before we come and go, okay, this system just doesn't work anymore. Like, so many people are looking at the big industries around them and going, they're not helping humanity in any way. Like food, media, pharmaceuticals, just like they're not for the best of people, but we kind of ship them out, like, and allowed like massive like systems to take place of having to go through such a process to get food, when if you've got a patch of land in the back of your garden, you should be by rights be able to feed yourself. But somehow we kind of removed the idea that was possible, and allowed the things that we have on our table to come from all over the world, that is then seemingly creating the problems. Yeah, we could have minimized those problems. So that's we outsourced so far that it's time to really bring it home on that level as well. But let's talk more about your work as well. I could go down that way too far, but let's talk about like more about your work and what you're doing, and how you're seeing your work change at this moment, if you're noticing any change or any deepening, any shift in what people are requiring from you at this moment in time.
I'm finding a huge increase in people wanting to work on integration. When I first started this a few years ago, I think I was the only one that was really talking about it. And with the exception of maybe like a few spiritual teachers, specifically mindfulness teachers, but they weren't using the word integration. So there's that huge shift, which I don't know what to make of it yet. I'm not making meaning out of it, but I'm definitely watching it. I'm definitely watching it. And I'm noticing there's a lot more people that are looking into wanting to integrate spirituality into their day-to-day lives. And that's what I'm seeing becoming a lot more of my work. Whereas initially, I think it was a lot more with a spiritual crisis, individuals who have like really far out spiritual experiences, like seeing things, hearing things, and then becoming super overwhelmed with that. So integrating those experiences. But now there seems to be more of this call around how do I integrate my spirituality into my day-to-day life, as opposed to it being two completely separate dimensions, right? Like I go to work, there's the mundane, I go grocery shopping, and then I sit and meditate and I feel blissed out and in full connection with the universe and the mysterious field that's within me and without me and through everything. How can I integrate these two? Yeah, so that they're not so separate. They have been so separate, right? It's been monks and nuns who sit in the monastery and they get to experience that. And then the rest of us are in the mundane day-to-day life. And I think that this sort of divide as well, I would say that is another huge issue in our global society. And we really need to integrate these two. And how do we do that is just, for me, it's just such an exploration, because it depends on the individual, right? And we talked briefly before we started recording around resistance. Yeah. And you mentioned that was something that you were focusing on. And same thing, like what's the resistance to really holding your spiritual insights and your spiritual beliefs in your day-to-day life? Yeah. To begin to see the interconnection of things, that anything that shows up, any person, any idea, that it weaves through, and not doing it from a place of dissociation, of disembodiment, but doing it in a way where we're connected to the here and now, to this reality, to the mundane, and yet the spiritual can permeate through at the same time. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, me too. That's and because one of the things, like, if I'd mentioned it to you before, when people ask me what I do and I say I'm a spiritual life coach, they actually lean in more as well, because like before it would have been, or before I really kind of went into the coaching and just spoke about my own spiritual experiences and me meandering in and out of so many different modalities over the course of many different years, and like seeing what that meant, and seeing what, you know, what the flavor of the teachings were, and how much it gave me, until it just didn't give me any more. And then I'm like, okay, it's time for me to kind of like take my bag and go and like see where the next thing is. And I spent so many years like weaving in and out of so many different modalities and so many different practices and belief systems that sometimes look very different, but ultimately have like a real similarity running through them, because everyone has their own terminology, and sometimes things go much deeper. Sometimes things have almost a heavily kind of intellectual bent with it as well. And then sometimes things are so ungrounded and woo that you're like, okay, you know, like let's do this for a while. And some, you know, I think it has
let's do this for a while.
Yeah, but I think it has its I don't think it's a long-term thing, because it's not really helpful for anybody. And and it seems to be useful to kind of like maybe to kind of come out of like every day. It's like, oh, what's this stuff? You know, let's go and kind of do the real woo, you know, like the woo the woo that's got the woo that's like completely off with anything, until you're like, okay, now, like you're talking about integration, it's like when the dark stuff happens, how do you do the work that we talk about, and the deep work, and looking at the darker things and looking at the harder emotions and going through the pain of our experience and the reality and the disappointments and all the stuff that the love and light wouldn't allow you to do, because it's like, you know, positive vibes only, sis, you know, we don't want any of that kind of stuff here, which doesn't help long term, you know, because when in my own journey, there were times where there are many practices that I could still do now that would like keep me sitting in an energetic bubble for like years and years, you know, like, and being not really having to deal with stuff, and like bypass and live life in a very nice, cushy bubble of like space, but then not really being able to deal with anything, and not having really addressed any of the things, or the wounds, or the traumas, or anything that was calling you to kind of deal with it, that got you seeking things in the first place. You know, like you kind of got to something that's like, this needs to be dealt with, even though you don't necessarily know what it is, but you know that you're being called to address something, and then you happen upon a practice that will just keep you here for a long time, you know. So I kind of saw things like that, but when it didn't work for me, I walked away from it. I'm like, this is not helping me, you know. But I saw how people I've been around for 3, 4, 5 years are just kind of still there now, you know, 5, 6 years later doing this. But I'm like, I had to go into the depths of, by being disappointed by it, was I disappointed? Really? I think I was just like not really surprised. You know, like you kind of go into a situation where people are kind of, there's a hierarchy of persons, you know. Like yeah, exactly. There's a hierarchy of persons, and then suddenly you're like, oh God, you're human. Shit.
Yeah.
You know, like you were supposed to, like, you know, help the stuff. But then just like for like the period of time I'm thinking about was, then I just like let go of anything, because I realized just sitting and just kind of like trying to like mantra it away was not gonna do it. And I had to like so like hit the ground with a splat and like literally work out how I was going to get out of that situation, you know. So
that's painful.
Yeah, it was, you know, but it gave me, actually, that period of time, it gave me a real understanding of others suffering around me, that maybe I had managed to stay in a safe space for many a year. And it was interesting because I had an astrologer on like a few episodes back she'd done my astrology, and she'd said that there was something that like got me to hit the ground with and deal with my emotions, because I'd managed to kind of like, even though there was a lot of chaos around me, I'd managed to kind of keep myself safely, you know, not really experiencing the extremes of it, seeing it and kind of being shaken by it, but still having a way of kind of like traversing like traveling through it despite the turbulence. And then there was a point in time that it got to the point where like, you're going to have to like hit the deck. And I hit the deck. You saw it on my thing, you know.
Wow.
So yeah, saying all of that to just talk about spirituality and how broad a spectrum is included in that term at the moment. When people enter into spirituality, what is it that they're really walking into? And does it matter? Does it matter that they kind of go through their spiritual journey doing something that maybe someone in a different modality might consider to be a bit lightweight and a bit woo-woo and a bit bypassy? Are they having a deep enough experience? Do you know what I mean? Like, does it matter that some people's experiences seem lighter? Is that as much as their soul can take? Maybe that's what I'm going for. Like, some people need to go through the mud and the darkness and the shadows because their soul requires that level of rigorous learning and turning over. I don't know, it's a question.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I wonder, for me, what comes up as I listen to you is are people aware that they're doing that? And if they're aware and they're still choosing it, by all means, go for it. If that's where your sense of agency is pulling you towards, who am I to tell you that that's wrong? But if they're not aware and they're doing that, I think that's the trap, it's falling for the love and light and thinking that that is all that spirituality has to offer you. And doing the whole spiritual bypassing thing, which you briefly touched on, and not being aware that they're doing it, right? That for me, that's where I come in, and I want to be like, hey, do you know you're doing this? If you know, totally cool. But if you don't know, how do you feel about it now that you do know? Do you want to make a different choice now that you have a little bit of a wider picture? Maybe you don't. And again, that's totally okay. Yeah.
But how do you do that? You know, because if someone is like safely bypassing, right?
Safely bypassing.
Like okay, they're bypassing for their own safety. So, you know what I'm saying? You know, they're kind of like, but like, because it's cushy and it feels all right. And then someone goes like, that's not it.
Well, because it's also a coping mechanism, right? It's the same reason why people turn to alcohol or turn to MDMA or turn to, marijuana. It's a coping mechanism. Same with spirituality. It can be a coping mechanism, right? It's just a way for us to self-regulate our nervous system. And that bliss and height and that dissociation, that spiritual bypassing, I think it's a way to regulate our nervous system. Yeah, because whatever happened is too much. It's too hard to look at. It's too painful. I don't have the capacity to look at it. So in a way for me to feel balanced in this insanely crazy world where I'm being told how to look, how to be, that I have to work 9 to 5 and I need to be working 60 hours a week, I don't know, hypothetically, to pay for food and rent, and maybe if I have a kid, right? Like, that's insane. Yeah, that's way too much on our systems. And if the only way that I can survive that kind of life is to do the spiritual bypassing thing, to regulate my system, to feel safe, then I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. That's a natural mechanism within ourselves to seek safety, to find regulation, right? And the thing, though, right now is, because we can all do that, right? We can all become nuns and monks and go out into the Himalayas, and there's still caves there, and we can be meditating and reaching beautiful, blissful states and stay in those states. And yet, what is happening to the world around us, right? What is happening to our planet? What is happening to the wildlife? What is happening to trees that are hundreds of years old? Yeah, what are we doing to our children? What are we doing to our old people? My goodness, like my grandmother now, like that's very alive for me. She's 86, yeah? And we don't want to put her in a home, but also we're finding that when she lives with us, like it's just, we can't be the sort of support that she needs. So what do we do? Right? Like there's all these questions, and sure, I can do the spiritual bypassing and go become a nun. And that's always a choice for me. Yeah, I'm definitely keeping that on the back burner. And yet, am I turning my back to all the pain and suffering that maybe as a human being, I can actually take some responsibility for? Yeah. That I can step into the hardship and say, hey, here I am. I want to be in service. There's a lot that's wrong here. Can we be curious about creating new systems? Yeah. Can we be curious about relating to one another as human beings in a more compassionate, understanding, curious, loving, maybe even not love, maybe love is too much, but even just, can we be respectful,
right,
to one another?
Can we?
I hope so. I hope so. I think even the spiritual bypassing stuff, I think that can be useful, right? Because all that love and light, as long as you can bring it with you when you're driving, when you're at work, when you're in the grocery store and the lineup is huge, when somebody cuts in front of you, yeah? As long as you can still bring some of those spiritual values into your day-to-day life, then maybe that's okay. Right? But back to the bypassing and the love and light, I think it's just a way to self-regulate, to find safety, because our world is just, it's too insane. It's too scary.
So then for those who find solace in that space, do they see out their existence in that space, or do they descend into what it, you know, the grit of their reality and work through that? Or is it for some souls just to never go there?
Yeah, that will be up for them to explore, right? I mean, I'm sure everybody has their own individual journey, right? And it's up to us to explore. But I think the muck, the depth of it, I think that's where, once you go through that and then you come back out, that's where the gold is, right? Like in the muck, that's where the beauty is. That's where the wisdom is. That's where the depth is. I think if we only stay in the spiritual bypassing, I think it can be quite superficial. Yeah, not very real, right? Like, yes, we are spiritual beings and we're all interconnected and it's all love and light. And there's these darker aspects to being human, of jealousy, of competition, yeah, of being petty. Yeah, we have that too. And instead of turning our backs towards them, can we turn towards these parts of ourselves with curiosity and compassion, right? And I wonder if we can turn to those parts of ourselves with compassion and curiosity, the parts that are petty and jealous and competitive. If we can embrace those, can we then embrace other individuals who show those characteristics of being petty, of being competitive, of being whatever? Yeah. And turning towards those individuals in that way, I wonder how it would shift our communities, right? I wonder, and once our communities are shifted, I wonder how it would shift our systems and our larger society. So that's the way that I kind of see this path. But yeah, I'm not quite sure if that answered your question.
I don't think there's a right answer to it. It's just,
I don't think there is either.
You know, it's just a curiosity. Like when you were saying that, I was just thinking of when I'm thinking of my own lowest point, and the point where it turned around was when I just went, this is where I am. Like, stop fighting it, you know. And nothing changed, really. You know, like I wasn't like magically like it wasn't magically over, but it was like a turning point, and going like, let's actually, like, now that we're here, let's just like let's like kind of look at all the details of where it is and what this means and what it really feels like, and maybe try and record what it is, you know, just kind of take notes almost.
That takes a lot, that capacity to be able to pause and sit with the depth, that takes a lot of energy. Yeah. I think you probably had some skills that were available to you already that gave you that support, that you could sit in it and take stock of what was happening around you. Like for me in my 20s, I didn't have the capacity. I needed to run away.
I didn't have the savings. So I did.
Yeah, that too.
Trust me. You know, trust me, like I was like, literally, I had like lost everything. So I just like had zero. So it was like, okay, like this is where we are. You know,
no
like
choice.
we've like got zero, like in fact less than zero. But it was just noticing, like, and then every now and again I can think back and go, man, like that was not so long ago, like a matter of years, less than 3 or 4 years ago, you know. And to then really be able to see where I am now and see the, you know, everyone talks about the journey, but literally seeing the journey of moments of where it was like, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, but I know it can't last forever. So something's going to give. because I decided that my life had more meaning. I always knew that I was supposed to do something.
Mm.
You know, like there was always this thing, which is always the thing that kind of kept me like straight in the chaos of my life. You know, when things were like going like this, I'm like, I'm here for a reason. I'm here to create something that's going to, you know, you're talking about service. I'm here to do something. I'm here to use my creativity. I'm here to do. So even when it was going through that, I'm like, well, I'm here to do something. This is just like a moment. So I knew I couldn't ever give up. And even I was thinking about this the other day. I had a reading, like a tarot reading. And it would be about probably like 25 years ago now, 25, 26 years ago. And I remember because I was working as a waitress at the time, and I used to go to this every night, like, round about my birthday or something like that. And it was a woman who told me as well at that time. And because I was trying to get into music. So I thought she was just going to tell me that I was going to be a pop star and really like madly famous. You know, of course, she didn't tell me anything of the sort, but she told me that I was here to do important work, you know, and that all of the things that I would do wouldn't make sense one day. And she just like, the thing that I always remember about her was just saying like, never give up, like never give and she just kept going on, like laboring the point, you know, as to like, okay, all right, like, okay, I won't, you know. So there was always this thing of like, even when things were like spiraling out of control, that I was like, I'm not going to go out like this. Like, it's just like, this is absolutely not going to be it. And also there was a level of stubbornness because there was an expectation that I was going to fuck my life up anyway. So it was like partly like, I'm like, okay, but I'm not even going to like, I'm not going to give them the opportunity to be proved right. It's like, it's not going to finish here. Even though I don't know how I'm going to get out of this, I'm going to get out of this. This is going to be a story that I'm going to tell. That's why when I'm like, okay, this is probably the lowest. But also it was a time to really understand other people's depths that I didn't fully appreciate because I'd never been there. So I'd always witnessed their suffering from the outside, just going like, can it really be that bad? And it's like, yeah, it can. Because when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, okay, this is what it feels like, a real separation of self. And then where's that other bit of me that kind of like moves me together? There was a gap between that for a while. And then just kind of just taking stock of it. I'm like, one day I will recall this. And one day I'll be able, and there were many things that happened around, because I've just got a dark sense of humor. So many things that were probably not that funny, but I can like recall in a funny way looking back. But also there were like many like amazing, miraculous, beautiful moments that just kind of happened out of nowhere. Places, people that I would never have met, conversations that I would never have had, situations that were hard, but then were just showed a different side of humanity, shows that there are many people existing in many different ways in this world, but there's life for them also. And it just, you know, there was like a weird gratitude about it, that I was like, I'm seeing this and there's a part of me that's grateful because I know I'm just passing through, and for some people this is their lifelong reality. But I know that I'm just kind of a passenger here. And then a weird kind of guilt, knowing that I was moving through it. It was just like I needed to go down to see all of this to come out, to then really hold on to where my life was going to take me and what I was going to experience, and that strength of like building all the bits coming back as I'm pulling myself, you know, bit by bit out of the pit of everything. But then also building up more strength, more resilience, and more boundaries in that, do you know what the fuck I've just been through? Like, it's not, you know, like all of those things. So yeah, an interesting point in time that I have a deep gratitude for how real that situation was, really. You know, I still don't fully have the words for it, but I'll never forget it. Of kind of going down there. And that's just, you know, allowing, but I never really bypassed anyway. I hung around with them for a bit, but I did.
Yeah.
Life didn't afford me the luxury of being able to bypass, really. I didn't have that option. No.
How did you know, you touched on something earlier when you said like the whole love and light, and the words that you used were, this isn't helpful for me, and you decided to walk away. How did you know those love and light practices, or whatever it was, maybe it was a community, how did you know it wasn't helpful for you?
Because I was pretending. I was being like, I didn't even have anything to really compare it to be honest. It was like, I'm here, and then sometimes you're like around, you catch sight of your reflection, you're just like, why are you here? Like, there was just like part of me just like, what are you doing? Like, this isn't it. This isn't it. It was just, it was fun, it was floaty, it was like, but it didn't allow me to voice all that I wanted to voice. And I hadn't yet fully found my voice yet, but I just thought there's not room here for me to be all that I want to be. As long as I can keep it pretty and nice and everything, then I'll be here. But I'm like, as nice as I am, I like the grit and the dark and the rough jokes and that kind of thing. But it takes an edge. It takes a level of strength to be able to hear someone kind of tell a story in a raucous way, in a real way. And the love and light holders didn't have the strength to hear me tell things in the way that I wanted to tell them, in the real, raw, heartful way. Not through anybody's fault. It didn't bolster that strength in other people. So you knew that they didn't have the capacity to hold what I wanted to give. So I'm just like, we need to go.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you that what I'm hearing is that you were only finding acceptance for one part of yourself. Yeah. The part that you were presenting, that whatever was underneath, that you didn't feel safe to express. And maybe it was because nobody else was expressing it. I would assume. Yeah. But that here we are, we're a human being, right? Like, we're not perfect. We can say that we're gods and goddesses, and yet we're human beings. We have human follies. Yeah. And to be able to hold our full whole self, as opposed to, like, the way that I see it, kind of, or sensing it, it's almost like there was only the front of you that was being accepted. Yeah, like the icky stuff in the digestion system and the colon and like all the other stuff that is so much of part of being human that couldn't be allowed.
But to respond to that briefly is to, like, just thinking back to those communities, where everyone is being so nice at the front end, because I'm guessing everyone felt the same. The reason being because it would, every now and again, that would come out from different people. So that everyone's holding something. Because if you don't allow it to come out in its natural state, it's going to leak out the sides every now and again. It's going to be that passive aggressive stuff. It's going to be that kind of like over spewing of things, not knowing how to deal with it. It's going to be that complete breakdown, instead of standing up and just going, this is what it is. So everyone's just doing this stuff, dancing with the fire with everything on at the front, but then at the back it's like it's exposed. Like that kind of thing. So yeah, it doesn't, ultimately it's not helpful, but I think it's for everyone within that to get to the point where, if they choose, if they really want to do more, to find the space that allows them to do that without judgment also.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And to know that that's not all that spirituality is, right? That to walk a spiritually embodied life is very different from just pretending that everything is love and light.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that there are people who do it. Yeah. That there are people who do it. So, and also that we're all still human, to not put anybody up on a pedestal, right?
Right.
But just because we're spiritual, that we're going to be perfect. No, we're still human.
What a conversation we've had. We've gone all over and everywhere, haven't we?
A little bit, yeah. It feels like we've just kind of dipped in, like we could sit for another hour together.
Just like, why not? But I love it because it's like there's like, it's just such an intriguing topic for me, spirituality, of what it is, or just like the human condition and the world, and like say what we're doing here, like, does it have meaning? Doesn't it? Like, what's the point? Or is there a point? Or there is a point, like wake up on different days going, yep, absolutely. And other days going, no, not today.
I'm just going to lie in bed and cry.
Exactly.
and just be depressed, and that's okay.
And that's as much life as that's as much living as, getting up and like kind of shifting and changing and doing all the things. It's like, just, it is another day of your life. So will we ever know? Maybe the whole point is just to be here and just ponder it for as long as we're here to ponder it, and then just close our eyes one day and then wake up and just go, what was that about?
Right, what was that experience?
Yeah. We will never know, and maybe that's part of the fun. Maybe
it's just an exploration. That's it. Who knows?
Thank you so much for today. Can you just let everyone know where they can connect with you and find your work and so forth?
I am on Instagram. Maybe that's the easiest one to find right now. And it's my Instagram is integration.work. Dot is in like the little period. Yeah, integration work. My website is my name, which is pretty difficult, unfortunately. I didn't think about that when I created it, but now it's a thing. It's my first name, last name. Yeah, so it's andradediu.com, ANDRADEDIU. And I'm a therapist. Yeah, so I like to hold people in their depths. That sounds a little bit strange, but that I find that that's my purpose. Yeah, that's where I feel most alive, is to sit with people, and that feels right for me right now in terms of what our planet is going through. That's where my skills come in. Thank you, Carol. It's been a pleasure to be here and to chat with you and to get to know you more. I hope this isn't the last time that we chat. Yeah.
No. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Andra, for sharing such a meandering conversation with me. Those are the perfect conversations that I like, and I think it's a brilliant introduction into 2024. And thank you for listening. You can find out more about me on my website. It's carolmaywhittick.com, carolmaywhittick.com. You can also connect with me on Instagram and Facebook by Carol May Whittick, and on Instagram, Casmic, CAZMICK. Welcome to 2024, and it's going to be a great one for all of us. Until the next episode, take care.